Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of the Indie Initiative. I'm your host, as always, Mike Straw here with Insider Gaming, and I'm pleased today to be joined by the game director of Paleo Pines from Metallic Pig, Nina Roussakoff. Nina, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here, Michael.
So, for those that may not know what Paleo Pines is, I start this off every interview I start with, could you give me a quick elevator pitch of what Paleo Pines is?
Okay, gosh. Paleo Pines is the most adorable dinosaur ranching sim. It's inspired by games such as Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon as the sort of precursor to that, as well as our enduring childhood love of dinosaurs. The game itself is a love letter to childhood summers. You know, when those really long summers that just go on forever, and you're out in the woods and you're playing and your imagination is so alive. And of course, you can imagine a dinosaur around every corner. It's a game about that. It's capturing that sort of childhood joy.
How long did it? I mean, the game's been in development, correct me if I'm wrong, since 2019. What went into that decision of you wanted, obviously, this you have to do something to stand out, but what went into the decision to make it a dino ranching title?
I think a part of that was because of the great passion and love that Jordan Bradley, the concept artist who came up with the concept, has for dinosaurs. The concept for the game emerged from a game jam, and then everybody loved it so much that, obviously we took that further as a studio and really looked at what that game could become. But that's how it was conceived.
So you have the idea of what you want the game to be, or like the general scope of it. What went in, or what was the process like deciding we need to have like the features of the game? We need to have this, we need to have this, like to make sure it stands out, because there's so many indie titles, so many great indie titles, that it gets to where, okay, we need to find a way to make our game noticeable to community.
Wow. I mean, that's such an interesting way of looking at it. I would say actually for us, it was clear that it did stand out because of the dinos. And what we looked at more was the creating a game that would really feel great, that would really, really embrace what the vision was. And one of the things that we did quite early on is create a high-level vision document, which really narrow down like what it is that the game was meant to feel like. It was very much driven around, like I said, capturing that childhood spirit, and really capturing the feelings that you would feel, if you did have genuinely had dino pals, and really kind of focusing in on that. And from that high level vision, that's what all the features kind of naturally rolled out from that in a way, because once you know the kind of feeling you're trying to capture, the decisions about how the features are meant to work become that much easier.
How with the game, I know we're not going to get into like, actually, you know what? No, name me 10 different types of dinosaurs. No. When you guys are deciding on, we want to the features within the game, so there's all these different farming titles, and obviously you're going to take from things. You brought up it being like a love letter to Animal Crossing. How do you go about deciding which features to prioritize?
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting one. Well, we had defined what our core pillars were. So we had dinosaurs. We wanted to have this sort of sense of a harmonious community, and the sense of sort of discovery that was really important to us. The idea that there was something behind every rock, behind every tree, that there were new things around, just also like features unlocking and stuff like that. So discovery, dinosaurs, community, and then trying to remember what the fourth one was. Tell you what, I'll just open up the design. I'm going to cheat.
That's perfectly fine. It's an open book test. Which were my favorite kind of tests.
They are much better, actually, because I think they measure people's true ability much better, don't they?
That's how I am. Yeah, I have Google for everything I need in life. I don't need a closed book test anymore.
So we had Dinosaurs Discovery, and then one of them was Settler. Well, at least we named it Settler, but it's about living off the land and back to basics living was quite important for us. So with those kind of, when you look at those four, it already tells you some of the things that aren't possible, like where you should kind of put more of the emphasis. So of course, farming made a lot of sense, for example, for this title, because if you want to have that back to basics living, it's very much part of that, the fantasy of that, as well as providing food for the community is just such a sort of part of that as well. So it tied into like a few different pillars, whereas some other features, for example, that are not included in the game is fishing is something that people have asked for, are really interested in. That's something really common to this genre, but it didn't really hit home on any of the core pillars for us. And it's not that we might not ever consider putting fishing in, but it wasn't something that was going to be in there on release, because, you know, there's a finite budget and you have to decide what you do, or else you just make the mother of all games, right? So
and then it never comes out because you're consistently adding, like we've seen it countless times.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really important that we kind of had an idea of what we really narrowed in on. And the other thing that we really considered was that we wanted to create a game that anybody could play, where all of the base mechanics, everything that you can do in the game is accessible in a easy to understand way for people. But I didn't want to create something that would have that would just regurgitate what's already been done. I'm a big fan of the kind of the cozy genre, and specifically farming sims. I've played, I think, probably every Harvest Moon game / Rune Factory game that there has been made, almost all of them. And the thing is, after a while, you just see the same patterns repeat over and over again. And so I felt like it was really important to also have something that adds depth to each of the systems, or as much as possible, that gives something a little fresh to people that have already played the genre to death. So for example, in the way that we do farming, there's a crop rotation mechanic. You don't have to engage with that. You don't have to do any crop rotation whatsoever. You can still get 1-star crops and sell them at the market just fine. But if you want to increase, you know, the kind of the value of your crops, and you really pay attention to those deeper systems, then that's available there. It's there for people to engage with. And we've tried to take that approach with across the game with all of our different features.
So being a game director, and you have to ultimately make these decisions, how difficult has making some of these decisions been? Like, okay, well, we just can't justify working on this feature or adding this when all this other stuff over here needs to get completed. Like, what goes into the decision process for you and your team and whoever you work with to get these narrowed down, to make sure you're not scope creeping or just expanding into like a reverse pyramid where you're just opening this funnel of everything?
Oh my God, yes. All of those things. Sure. I mean, it is really difficult. It's difficult because everybody's very passionate. Everybody loves making this game. Everybody wants it to be the best it could possibly be, myself included. But there's also a lot of practical considerations that need to be taken into account. And yeah, as you said, if you try and do everything, the game's never going to come out. And there's milestones to hit. You know, you got to keep the publisher happy.
Yeah.
You have to consider what the community is going to think of, what's going to be meaningful to them. Sometimes you might want to take into account things like marketing considerations, because, you know, ultimately we also need to hopefully sell the game enough to make back the money that it costs to make it. And you know how expensive making games is. It's very expensive. I think it's deceptive, right? I mean, Paleo Pines is a multi-million-pound project, right? Like you would not, most people don't think about that when they look
No,
at a game and it's kind of cozy and it's wholesome. They think, oh, this is, just a small little game. It's not.
yeah, and I
um,
think a lot of people have that, I don't mean to interrupt, have that mindset with indie games in general. They just assume these indie games are small, low budget titles, and it's like that's not always the case. Like I think it can be a refined, deep game, but it doesn't have that major AAA publishing behind it. And I think trying to help people understand that is one of the biggest for me, it seems like from the outside of development, one of the biggest things to, I guess, hammer home.
yeah. I think one of the things I like to say to people is just imagine a very simple scenario. Okay. So what do you need to make a game? You need, programmer, tech artist, modeler, 2D artist, producer, you know, uh, audio person. And actually the list just keeps going. And then you have like 10 people. So you need 10 people to make a game like Paleo Pines. Our game was made with a team on average of around 20 people at any one time. Obviously, some people coming in on and off at the project if their skill set was only needed for a few months. But let's say 10 people, and let's say you pay these 10 people a salary of $25,000 a year. Like that is a ridiculously low salary, but let's go with
Either
that
way,
just for
yeah.
a moment. Okay. That's 10 people for a year. That's $250,000 per year. And it takes you 3 years to make a game, $750,000, right? Like you get to those numbers so quickly and so easily. Anyway, I digress. The point being that yes, it's very hard because at that point you're looking, as a game director, I have to take into account the production. I have to take into account how the team feels about any one decision as well, because you don't want to crush team morale either. You have to think about the player experience and what's really important for the player experience. You have to think about the marketing considerations. Can we afford to lose this feature, or is this going to be a disaster with our community? Are we going to get a backlash? How's the publisher going to feel about this? How are the people at the top of the company going to feel about this? Because I'm not the CEO of the company, right? I'm a game
Yeah.
director that's working for the people that run the company, and they might have things that they care about that are important to every Italic Pig game, not just what I think is right for Paleo Pines. So by the time that you actually come to reach a decision, you have so many different stakeholders and so many different factors to take into account. And to be honest, by that point, my own heart is not even a factor in it anymore. I might love a feature and it might break my heart to say we can't do this. But if I know that by doing it, I would jeopardize all of those people, all of their aspirations, everything that's right for the game, then it just has to go.
Would you say, aside from financial constraints, like budget aside, that's been the biggest challenge, is just keeping things in line with not only the publisher but the company as a whole, and the team, and make sure you don't lose the charm of the game? Would that be like trying to keep everybody happy, which is impossible to do? You cannot keep every single person happy, and that's just never going to happen. But would you say that's been the biggest challenge throughout this process, or has there been something else that's popped up?
Oh, I mean, we've had so many different types of challenges that were difficult at the time, as any game development project does. But I think probably all of those ultimately are more or less what you say, which is the challenge of this game would be great if it had these things in it. But there are other factors,
Yeah.
One of the so for example, one of the things that was quite tricky for Paleo Pines was that partway through the project, we parted ways of our publisher at the time. This was not because of any animosity or things not working out with the publisher. They got bought up by a much larger company, and the larger company had to assess all of the different portfolios of everything that the publisher had and make a decision about who they were going to keep and who they weren't going to keep. And we were sadly one of the projects that didn't make the cut. So it was just the way that it was. And that's difficult for the team, right?
Yeah.
Because we've been working on it so hard, and now we're we're kind of in this limbo, and very actively looking to work with someone else. And the project obviously needs to continue. You want to finish it off, but you start to look at lots of different ways in which you can do it. So we kind of had to not go on hiatus as such, because there was still like low grade continued development, but it was a really difficult time for the team, because we had all this uncertainty to deal with of like whether or not we would find a new publisher on time to be able to continue working with the project. But simultaneously, it's also something that gave the project a real boost and a new lease of life. When we signed with Modus, it was fantastic, because we were able to start that relationship and the project almost from day one, if that makes sense, while having already had 2 years of development on the project under the belt, and
yeah.
And that means that actually, we were able to bring on people onto the project that previously we were struggling to be able to bring on, just due to the way that our arrangement had up until that point. So you get these kind of really low points where things get really hard and you have to make a lot of difficult decisions, but then usually some sort of solution presents itself that actually is for the better of the project as a whole, and it's a real celebration. So I think it's very much part of the highs and lows of game development.
Before we move on to the game itself, you brought up, Modus, and you're not the first in this series, Paleo Pines, to have Modus come aboard as a publisher. It seems that they are very helpful. Based on all these conversations, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you can add your own. They've been a very helpful partner as a publisher, making sure these games that may or may not have, I don't want to say lost their way, but for whatever reason, we're looking for new publishers, get the treatment, get the attention that they kind of deserve, and help marketing budget, whatever it may be. Have you felt that with Modus? Like they're really there to help push this game and make it a success?
I think one thing that I've really enjoyed about Modus, and I've really liked, is how data-driven they are. I think their process of supporting a game in terms of like when you start working with them and then through all of the different milestones is very much based on how well the playtesting community that they've built responds to it, and you get a lot of feedback directly from players about your game, which I think is so invaluable. And just it's like that is the stuff that you really, really need as a game developer to be able to make objective decisions for the betterment of the game, right? Like you need that back and forth feedback from people that are engaging with it, some of whom are people that would buy the game, would play it, but some of whom are also people that probably wouldn't have normally picked it up and actually can come and, give their thoughts on a game from a very left field perspective that, as someone who really is immersed in the game and the development of it and the genre and everything else, it's much harder for me to get that fresh outsider perspective. And I think in that regard, Modus have been really a great support.
So with Paleo Pines itself, the Animal Crossing comparisons are going to be there, from some of the UI, from just how you interact with the townsfolk and things like that. Is there any concern? Has there ever been a concern that maybe not just Animal Crossing, but other games you've taken inspiration from that players will come and go, it's too much like that? Or how do you go about making sure you're similar in a way to show that, to honor those games of the past or whatever, but you make sure you are different enough?
Good question. I think in a way I've never felt too concerned about it because of our approach to design. And by that, I mean that we always went to the feelings first. So to give you an example, for the idea of having this harmonious community, one of the things that was really important for us was that you form relationships with the community gradually and organically by trading resources and exchanging skills. That was kind of like a fundamental sort of idea of how we wanted to do that aspect. So once you've established that, we prototyped a few different ways of doing trading, for example. We looked at, well, how can we make it feel organic and gradual? And then, yes, of course, you do look at what's out there and you take inspiration from existing games, because sometimes these things have been done really cleverly, really well, and there's a perfect solution and it fits in this game. But a lot of the time, it was also a challenge because actually maybe things are not done that way. To give you an example, trading resources, we looked at several different games and assessed how fun it is to do it that way. And what we found, well, what we concluded is it's not actually that fun to trade stuff for stuff without any currency involved. Is less fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun to have a currency. But we started off, we prototyped it without a currency. We did look at also other games that did it and how they did it and whether they, did it in a way that worked for the player or not. I looked at reviews, looked at lots of different things. And in the end, it made more sense to allow the trading, but still also have a currency in the mix so that you can still swap things for things. But if you put a little more on your side in, then there's also shells as well as the stuff that you're trading for. And that UI and how that all has come together is something that's, as far as I know, unique to our game. And a lot of research has gone into that. And we've looked at, like, for example, my time at Porsche has kind of a similar thing. We did look at those things, but ultimately we always came to our own solution and our own conclusion at the end.
Here's something that I think, because I before I move on, Animal Crossing in my head, is there a terrible person like a Tom Nook in Paleo Pines? Because he's the worst thing ever.
Corlin is not Tom Nook. He is not Tom Nook, but he is the least wholesome out of the bunch. Let's put it that way.
So he's the closest without being a terribly greedy predator loan.
I think he certainly does no loans in the game for a start. But I think Corlin is like the closest we have to a capitalist in this world. That is based on, primarily the currency is friendship as opposed to money. but Corlin does care a bit about his profit. Yeah.
So with the game, with the art style, the some people who will look at it will look and think it's a game just for kids.
Mm-hmm.
What can you say to kind of ease those concerns, if there are any, because of the depth of it? Because obviously this is a game you want everybody to be able to play and people not to just skip because they think it looks for kids. So how would you answer those people who think in that kind of mindset?
It just is fundamentally, it wasn't designed for kids. It wasn't made with kids in mind. It is a bit picture book in terms of its visuals. It certainly has, it's a bit like Disney, like the dialogue, the characters. If children play it, they're not going to get some of the jokes that are in there, but adults will. So it walks that kind of line. But it's more a game for grown-ups than it is for children at its heart. It's just that I think children probably will also enjoy it.
How, as we get towards wrapping this up, when you guys released the demo, there is a demo available for those listening before launch date on September 26th, available on Steam. What has been the response to that of players who've actually been able to go in and check out what was created?
I have been astonished by the positive reception so far. Like, seeing people play the game and engage with it in like ways that I didn't even could have imagined has been such a delight. I think what I'm finding that really is really rewarding to see is that one of the things we wrote down for our core pillar for dinosaurs was that we wanted the dinosaur interacting with them to feel like they are your friend, your lifelong pet, your helper, and that you build that real connection with them, and that they're a joy to watch and interact with. And I think what I'm finding is that when I see people play the game and what people are writing about it is that they genuinely form a bond with their dinosaurs. And that was like, if there was anything that I was hoping we would achieve, it would be that, you know, the game has delivered on that part of it. You can spend time with your dinosaurs and they make you laugh and they're cute and they have different, you know, I saw someone play the game and they saw two dinosaurs chasing each other in the field and decided to befriend them both and bring them back to the ranch, put them in a pen together. And then what they found was those same two dinosaurs were still having fun and playing with each other in the pen. And, you know, it's very easy to interpret that as like they're friends, you know, they really like each other. And honestly, like we didn't program that in. That's just the AI doing what it does. These dinosaurs are genuinely just going off and doing things that we didn't expect. But because so much thought has gone into, you know, making sure that they have slightly different personalities, that there's all these different animations and different actions that they can carry out. Someone else was playing it and they saw that Lucky went into the bushes to play hide and seek. You know, you can't create those magical moments, you know, in anything other than in the moment that the player is playing it. And the fact that people are seeing that and really responding to that and then loving those dinosaurs and from the demo not wanting to part with those dinosaurs that is just the best feeling ever.
Is Paleo Pines going to be a game that has like special events throughout the year, seasons and things like that?
So do you mean in terms of in real time or yeah. So in the game, there are seasons and there are also festivals in the game. But as for post-launch plans and in terms of what we do with that, we don't have anything specifically, just because we don't know what's going to happen in terms of the release.
Yeah,
and how the
obviously, because this is where being an indie game comes in. You need to know how the support is and the demand, and obviously supply and demand is a thing. If there's a demand for it, I assume there'd be a better chance of more Paleo Pines down the line.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's what we're really hoping for as a team. We've got a huge list of like, would love to have these things in the game. And I'm really, really keeping all my fingers crossed that people continue to love the dinos as much as they seem to from the demo. And hopefully, you know, there are lots of adults out there who have a nostalgic warmth towards childhood that want to re-experience that again.
I already know I will. I know my son is obsessed with, both of my kids love dinosaurs. What this game makes me think of, in a way, is there's a Disney Junior show called Dino Ranch. It's a Canadian show that Disney acquired in the States. And it immediately made me think of that, where you have your dinosaur friend and you are doing what you want. And I guarantee this is going to be a game where my son, my 6-year-old is going to, or 5-year-old is going to sit next to me and watch me play and help me make my decisions and do what I need to do. So that's kind of how I'm expecting my experience to go.
That's really nice. I think the other thing that maybe people don't fully realize is a lot of scientific thought, as in like we try to be as scientifically accurate as we could be with the dinosaurs, even in the stylized style. And what I find is that in the people that are really fond of dinosaurs and in the sort of paleo community, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the effort that has gone into that. You know, we have feathered dinosaurs. They're generally proportionally relatively to each other correct. You know, there's a lot of there's sort of like a very subliminal aspect to it where you can actually learn a fair amount about dinosaurs, like for real, from the game.
Are there any angry, predatory, aggressive dinosaurs?
No.
Well, and I don't want. No, I'm kidding.
That is maybe the one bit where evolution took a different turn in our game.
They're all friends.
They're all super friendly. The carnivores don't eat any other dinosaurs. Although herbivores do not like to have carnivore food in their pens, makes them feel a tad bit uncomfortable. But aside from that, that is the closest that we get to, you know, hinting to as to any kind of carnivorous activities.
So Paleo Pines launches September 26th for Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want people to know about if they're maybe on the fence of picking the game up?
Sorry, I need to think about this one.
That's perfectly fine.
I'd say if people are on the fence about Paleo Pines, it is deeper than you think. There is more to do than you might imagine. And don't let first impressions stop you from trying it. The demo's free on Steam. Give it a go.
Well, Nina, I want to thank you for joining me here today. This is I love these interviews. They're so much fun, and this was a fantastic one. And I personally can't wait to dive into Paleo Pines. It's going to be, like I said, I already know what the plan is for me and my kids. So I know any game they prefer to watch me play than actually play something themselves. So I'm okay with it.
Well, I hope they get to at least ride around the dinosaur.
They'll be able to. Yeah, they'll take the controller from me for that. But any decisions, that's mine. It's my ranch, my rules.
I'm really looking forward to playing the game with my kids as well, because they know I've been working on it, but they've not really spent much time, you know, like they've had a go in it on my computer a few times.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm really looking forward to is when it comes out, getting the Switch version, sitting in our living room with you know, the big TV, putting a controller in their hands and going, this is the game that Mummy worked on, and then seeing
their
them play it.
And you hope to God they don't hate it. I do. Again, I want to thank you very much for taking the time. I know the game's release is right around the corner, so it's busy as ever for you. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.